Hello, you guys. Welcome back to Lily Reads. How are you guys? I am so excited to be here today. I have not filmed a sit-down video to chit-chat with you guys in a while. I've been doing vlogs. Most of you guys like my vlogs the most, so I try to keep vlogs pumping and going. But I went out of the country. I was in Africa. I went to Africa for a week, so I'm back, and I want to come and film a sit-down video with me. Now, if you remember, about a month ago, I filmed a video that was titled, I believe, like my lowest rated books that I've read this year, where I went on Goodreads and I looked up what were the lowest rated books that I read this year and did I agree with them. And for the most part, I did not agree with the list. The books that were the lowest rated books were not the lowest rated books for me, nowhere near. I don't think any of my actual lowest rated books, except for like one, was actually in my top 10, like Goodreads lowest rated. So I did not agree, but I was like, okay, it's time for a sequel. It's time to do the sequel. And in this video, we are going to discuss the highest rated books on my Goodreads. So I already have the stack, so we not scrummaging around on my bookshelf. These are the stacks of my 10 highest rated books on Goodreads. Now, I'm going to go in like the lowest of the highest rated to the highest rated. And so let's get on into it. So we have tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. If I can remember what all of these books are about, I will tell you what all of these books are about. But tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow is about these two video game programmers, these two people who create video games, and you're hearing about their professional and personal relationship with one another, and you're following them over some years, and what happens in their life as video game creators. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, but obviously this is one of the top 10 highest rated books that I read this year on Goodreads. Do I agree with that? Me personally, this is not going to go in my top 10 favorite books of the year. I don't even think it would go in top 20. I gave this book 4 stars, but I think it's not a very strong 4-star. A lot of people who read this book really leaves an impression with them, and it simply did not do that for me. Did I enjoy this book? Yes, but I love characters. I am a character girl. I just love following interesting characters. And this book, none of the characters are really all that interesting. And when you have a book where you're following a group of people over a long period of time, which is my favorite way to follow characters, I just expect to really be left with something to think about. And this book didn't really leave me with anything to think about. Things that happened to a lot of the characters in this book didn't really affect me the way I think they were supposed to affect me. So no, I do not agree. This is like the number 10 highest rated book that I read this year. Now, do I understand why this book is the number 10 rated book? Yes. As I look at my stack right here, all of these books appeal to a very wide audience, I think. I think even if you dislike this book, you cannot take away from the fact this book is well written. This book has an interesting idea. It has an interesting thesis. It's saying interesting things about life. And that's what most of the highest rated books, at least the ones that I've read this year, they're all saying something. They all have a big message, I think. I think they all cast a really big net. And that's what this book does. This book is written to be the highest rated book on Goodreads. I don't know how else to explain it. So yes, I totally get it. I think this book falls in line with a book that a lot of people would like. It's just not 100% for me. But I did give it 4 stars, so it's not like I deeply hated it. The next book we have at number 9 is Circe. Circe is the number 9 highest rated book that I read this year. Circe is following, the Greek goddess Circe, and basically how she is outcast and banished to her own island, and what she makes of her life after that happens to her. I am okay with this being the number 9 highest rated book that I read. I think if I was really into Greek mythology, I would love this book even more. I am not, but I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I would enjoy this book. I do believe this is... Will it be in my top 10 favorite books of the year? I think it's going to be in my most surprising books of the year. So, no, personally, it wouldn't be in my top 10, highest rated books I read this year. I did give it 4 stars, but I don't think I've given out 10 5 stars, so Maybe it is in my top 10. I don't know. But I will say I understand this book. I really like this book. This is a book I would 100% revisit. And I get it. I get exactly why it is where it is. And I actually agree that this book should be sitting at the rating that this book is sitting at. Let's move on. The next book we have is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. This is the number 8 highest rated book that I've read this year. I was so shocked when this was on the list. Like, I was like, whoa, this book is number 8. I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars, so obviously I do not agree. I think this book is a sign of the times. I think this book came out at the perfect time. We were having the perfect, types of conversation about feminism, about mental health, and I just think this book sums up the time that this book came out. I think if this book came out today, it would still have its people who love it, but I don't think it would have that deep passion that a lot of people had for it back then. I know I wouldn't pick this book up now, and so when you read it today in 2023 like I did, you're less impressed. You've read so many books that kind of do the exact same thing. My Year of Rest and Relaxation, Eileen, Sorrow and Bliss. There's so many books that do this exact same thing, and then some of them I think do it better. And so I just think that you're not as impressed with it. Careering also does the exact same thing. You're not as impressed with this book after you've read a lot of books that are like this. But I feel like this is one of the first books that kind of revived this genre of book. Young woman trying her best, dealing with depression, dealing with work, kind of that post young adulthood, dealing with what comes of yourself as you enter your 30s and stuff. And so I think this book found its audience, but I do think in today this book would not be rated as high. And I think as when newer readers read this book, they don't rate it as high as the readers who rate it from 7 years ago who read this book. So those are my thoughts. So no, I do not agree Eleanor Oliphant is a top 10 book that I read this year. Let's move on to another book I do not agree is a top 10 book. The number 7 book that is the highest rated book that I read is Legends and Lattes. This is about a ogre. Is she an ogre? I don't even remember. They start a coffee shop business, and something tries to threaten their coffee shop business. They all have to come together to save the coffee shop business, and that's it. I don't like this book. I do not like this book. I do not enjoy this book. I think this book is severely overhyped. A lot of people pitch this as cozy fantasy and all of that, and I find it boring fantasy. You call it cozy fantasy, I call it boring fantasy. I read fantasy books that are cozy, I would consider cozy, but are also interesting. I don't think this book has much of anything going on in it. And I understand books don't have to be complex and they don't have to have deep plots. I know that. If anyone knows that, Kenya knows that. I do not like books with very drawn out plots. I like really long books. I don't like really long books, but I do like, books where we really get into the characters and we really get into what is happening. And maybe that's why I don't like this book, but I don't need complex plots to enjoy a book. So it's not that this book isn't complex. I just don't think this is an actual book. I don't want to sound rude, but I don't think this book has really anything to say. I don't know, and maybe that's my problem, believing that books have to have something to say. I just don't find this book interesting. I don't know what else to tell you. I give this book 2, maybe 3 stars. I will not be reading a sequel. I just don't think this book has anything interesting to say. And then on the cozy aspect of it, I wasn't all that cozy. I wasn't all that cozy. It was just is this it? Is this it? So no, out of all the books sitting on this list, this would be the book I disagree with the most. I think this would actually go in it wouldn't go in the worst books I read this year because it's not that, but definitely the most disappointing because so many people like this. The cover is doing a lot of work. I think the cover is gorgeous, but I just don't feel like it was a book worth writing, and I think people are putting it in the cozy category. But is that kind of a cop-out? Yeah, nothing happens and it's just cozy, but also I think things should happen in books. I think things should happen in, whoa, shoot me, nail me to the cross. I think things should happen in books. I think books should just be a little bit interesting. Kill me. I don't know what to tell you. Books should be interesting. The number 6 highest rated book that I read this year is Babel. Do I understand why this book is here? Of course. Everyone and their mama loved Babel last year. Do I get it? No, I do not get this book. I do not get the love for this book. This book is fine to me. This book is fine. Do I regret reading this book? No, I learned a lot of interesting things in this book. And I do understand why people like this book. But what I don't understand is the deep love for this book. I can't wait to read Yellowface so that like I can say I like Arquan, because I am sure I am going to love Yellowface. But this book just didn't do anything interesting to me. Here is the thing. I have read many fantasy books now in the past few years. Not many, but like I've read fantasy books that I enjoy. So I know I can enjoy like a science fiction fantasy type of book. So when I step in front of one and I do not really love it, I'm just like, it's the book. Like, I'm sorry, because I know I can like this genre of book. This book was just long. It was just long, and there were moments where the word count really, paid off. I really liked some moments, but like altogether, it was fine. So no, I do not agree, but this is one of those books that is supposed to be loved by everyone. This book, I 100%, I think it cast a huge net. It's not niche. And I think a lot of times these books try to seem like they're niche. Like, ooh, if you like dark academia, if you like this, you would. But when you really think of like what this book is trying to say, like good defeating evil, capitalism is bad, you can find friends in anyone, all of this stuff. When you think of like the message that this book is giving, it casts such a big net. Like, if you believe in those things, which we all believe in those things, you're gonna like this book. And I don't necessarily like books like that. I've learned that now. Like, books that are just obvious what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to say and who wins and who loses, I do not like books like that, because I just want something more interesting. I want books to say things a lot more interesting. The best part about this book is, I think, R.F. Kuang as a writer. I think they are a brilliant writer, and the way that they're able to pull in ideas and the amount of work that goes into a book like this, that's what I appreciate the most about this book. But the overall it just, to me, it's too vague. It's too vague. It's too on the nose even. How can something be vague and on the nose? I do not know. But like, it's too like, should you work for a capitalist regime? No, you shouldn't, And so like, what am I supposed to take from that? I don't love that book. The next book, the number 5 highest rated book, I was so happy when this showed up on the list. Zoe Washington, From the Desk of Zoe Washington, is the number 5 highest rated book I read this year. And I 100% agree with this book. This is about Zoe Washington writing letters to her father, who was wrongfully incarcerated for a murder he did not commit, and her trying to get her father out of jail. I love this book. I think it is so important for middle grade books to touch on important topics and touch on it in a thoughtful way and touch on it in a way where kids can understand that, life isn't easy. It's not always going to be rainbows and sunshine, but also you can give children hope. And I feel like that's exactly what this book did. Zoe Washington is going through a lot, but Zoe Washington also has a lot of people in her corner. She has people who love her, friends who support her, and she's still going through middle grade type of things. I love this book. I think this book is amazing, not only just for people who are the middle grade audience, but also for people who are older, I think this book is really, really good, and I do believe this is the number 5 highest rated book that I read. I also read the sequel, and the sequel would also be on this list. They were like back to back in ratings. I think this book deserves more and more hype. I love it. I absolutely love it. And it goes back to like why I say I love books like this and not books like maybe a Tomorrow and Tomorrow and a Babel. This is very niche. Like this is very, I think this says something a lot more interesting. Like how can like a middle grade book say something more interesting, and I take away more from this book than I take away from a Babel. I just do. I don't know. Books that really hone in on a specific idea and a specific message, and it's geared towards a specific type of person. I just love books like that, you know? I find them to be a little bit more thoughtful. So yes, I agree. The book I think I also agree with like the least, Pachinko. Pachinko is the number 4 highest rated book I read this year. And boy, do I not agree. But this falls, and I don't have to repeat myself, this falls in the Babel and Tomorrow list. It appeals to a very wide audience. When you have this intergenerational type of story that follows a family over decades of their life, and you learn these deep thoughts and these deep ideas and these deep messages about this family, and you're supposed to take these deep messages from a book like this, of course it's going to appeal to a lot of people. But I don't like books that appeal to a lot of people. I don't like books that give me like philosophical ideas on the world. I like when a book says something and then I can draw the philosophical message I want to draw from this. I like my tales to be like a punch, like to just be very concise, and just like, and then from such a small section of time, or it could be a big section of time, because I love intergenerational, following people over decades, but from a specific story, I can take so much from it. But books like this that are so long, they say so much that you're gonna take something from it. It's saying so much, and the net is so wide, you gotta take something from it. And I'm just like, but it's lazy. And I don't mean like the writing is lazy. The writing in this book is absolutely amazing. I just am like, I feel like these books are supposed to be taught in school. That's a perfect way to describe it. These books are supposed to be taught in school because they teach such a wide message that everyone can agree with. In this book, everything that's supposed to happen to certain characters happens to certain characters. They all meet very sad, tragic demises. Then some people are able to overcome. It hits all the same beats. And I just like a little bit of unpredictability in my books. So no, I do not agree with that one. The number 3 book, highest rated book that I read this year is Recitative by Toni Morrison, and I 100% agree. If you have not read Recitative by Toni Morrison, please get on it. It's really short. It's a short story. It's absolutely amazing. This is a book that I constantly come back to in my head. I constantly want to revisit. This book made me rethink so many things in life, and this is what I mean. This book is just about 2 people who grew up in an orphanage together, coming back together and reuniting, and something that happened at the orphanage drawing them both together. That is a very just like boom story, but you're able to get so much out of it. And Toni Morrison did not try to whack you upside the head with all of these deep thoughts and all these deep things that you can take away from this. But you take away all of those things because the writing is so real and the writing is so true. And it causes the reader to do work, you know? Instead of you explaining to me, not even explaining to me, but doing things in the story so that I feel a certain way. You want me to feel a certain way, take away certain messages. Toni Morrison allows you as the reader to do a little bit of work. So if you don't take away the exact message that Toni Morrison wanted you to take away from that book, that's fine. Toni Morrison is okay with that. But if you do take away the message, it means you get the book. And that's what I love about books. I love books that are ambiguous, and they lean on more of how you see life. Instead of you explaining to me how life should be seen, it's about how you've seen life, and the things that you have experienced cause you to see the book in a certain way. And that's what Recitative did. That's what I enjoy about a book. It's the same thing with Zoe Washington. I grew up as a Black girl, so I'm going to take certain things away from this. And I think a book like Zoe Washington, unless you are a Black girl, you won't take away certain things from that book. And that's what I love about books. Books that are like, this book is for an audience. And yes, everyone can enjoy it. Obviously, they're high rated. So a lot of people who aren't just black or just that enjoy this book, obviously, but they appeal to a specific type of person, and that's what you're able to appreciate about it. Like maybe because some of these books I can't fully, Cersei, never been a Greek guy, not even into Greek mythology, but like I get what this book is trying to say about womanhood and about what comes with, like I get it, even though there's certain things that I haven't experienced, I get it, and I get what this book is trying to do without it trying to deeply, grab me. Rest did that. Let's move on. Before I let go, is the number 2 highest rated book that I read this year. Like, whoa. No, I do not agree that this is the second highest rated book. But I do understand this book, I have learned with the rise of like book talk and like Colleen Hoover having like Another Day in the Sun, people going back and reading all those old Colleen Hoover books and enjoying them. A lot of people like very dramatic romance, dramatic trauma, life story type of books. They love the soap opera of it all. That appeals to a lot of people. And I'm not here to knock that. I love my mess just as much as the next person. So I'm 100% not knocking that. But that's not necessarily what I really like to sink my teeth into. Yes, I did give this book 4 out of 5 stars. And I enjoyed this book. But when I think back on this book, I don't think this wasn't Lily Reed's book club, by the way. Ooh, Lily Reed's book club. But when I think back on this book, I don't think back on this book with just these like amazing thoughts on this book. So it's really interesting to see how many people really love a book like this. I am just not that type of person. I think people like books like this, especially people who don't read a lot of books. They like books that just are like very dramatic and big on the melodrama. And I think it's because it keeps you entertained because you never know what's going to happen next. And that is totally fine. But that's just not what I choose to like read. I like it every now and then, but after a while, I do begin to get a little exhausted of it all, get a little bit exhausted of the trauma. So like, I don't really search high up and down for like trauma type books necessarily about like regular people reading doing regular things and like regular people having trauma in their life. Now, I do love a traumatic story that's like maybe historical fiction that's rooted in something like bigger, but just like a regular person living their regular life and it's like trauma, that's not really my thing. But like I said, with the growing popularity of Colleen Hoover, her having a resurgence, it ends with us having a resurgence, all that stuff. People like those type of books. Colleen Hoover did the blurb on this book. I think a lot of people like those types of books. And I also rated this book high. So like I get it, but like also like the second highest rated book I read, I don't think I agree with that. So like not my thing. I also did not like Real by Kennedy Ryan for that exact same reason. It was big on the drama. That's just not for me, But the number 1 rated book that I read this year, and I am so happy to announce it, is Amari and the Night Brothers. This is what I mean by a book that isn't casting an enormous net. This book is about a black girl that is dealing with racism in her school and is looking for someone to understand her. She is looking to be seen. She wants a family. She wants her family back, and she just wants to feel comfortable in her space, in her environment, and in her body, and she just wants to be loved and appreciated. It's very on the nose, right? Like this book is trying to say this, but it's not casting too big of a net. But the reason why this book is the highest rated book I believe I read this year is because there's so much heart in it. I think the books that I talked about where I just feel like they cast too big a net, I feel like the heart isn't there because it wants to appeal to so many people, and it wants to make end of the year lists, and it wants to win Booker prizes, and it wants to do all of those things. But to me, a book becomes the highest rated book I read this year, and me agreeing that this is the highest rated book I read this year, when it wants to tell a story that is true, but it also wants to send across a specific message to a specific type of person. And I think this book is a book that champions little black kids, and it champions black people who love fantasy and want to see themselves as, the chosen one. So often black people have been left out of this idea of being a chosen one, being someone who overcomes and can help the world. And that is what Amari and the Knight brothers does. And then this book is so high rated and has so many ratings, and everyone loves it because, like I said, you don't have to be a black person to appreciate what this book is trying to do. You can still relate to it in some type of way. We have all been young before and wanted to see ourselves and wanted to be a part of something new and meet these people and make friends. And I just think this book is brilliant. I think this book is absolutely brilliant. It was a stroke of genius. It's so inspired. And I always use this word, but the word is thoughtful. This book is so thoughtful, and so much care goes into Amari's story, and so much care goes into Amari as a character. I love this book. I cannot stop singing the praises of this book. This is a book that, it's so crazy that when I take books like Pachinko, Babel, Tomorrow, those are such highbrow books, right? But to me, this is the one that has the most important things to say. And that's just how I am as a reader. I just love a specific story told about a specific person that appeals to specific types of people and is not trying to appeal to everyone. But if you read it and you care about people and you're able to empathize with people and you're able to see yourself in anyone, you can also appreciate a book like this. And that's Amari for me. So those are the 10 highest rated books that I read this year. I think that this list, the books that I showed, it's too heavy on the obvious Pachinko, Cersei, Tomorrow, Babel. Too obvious on those, but I am happy it has things like Zoe Washington, Recitative, Amari, and even Before I Let Go, because I feel like a lot of black romance gets pushed to the side. So the fact that a black romance book is rated so high makes me feel good, because that is literally why I started the Lily Reads Book Club. I think Eleanor Elephant is just a sign of the times. If the book came out today, it would not be as high rated. I think a lot of those high ratings come from the time when it came back. The one I deeply don't agree with is Legends and Lattes. I do not enjoy Legends and Lattes. And that's that. And that is that on that. Yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.